And welcome, sports fans, to today's Roundtable, and glad you joined us right here on YHC TV Channel 21 and CMOSportsZone.com. And we're here to recap some spring sports results that took place this week, and also quite a few stories from the area when it comes to high school athletics across the board, fall through spring, and we're going to get to those as well. We're going to touch on the baseball state rankings for the state of Missouri as well, so quite a bit to get to today. We've got quite a bit to talk about. We're going to have Travis Quatermas with us here in studio to talk about the spring sports results and also stories from the area in high school athletics. So I'll have to talk about for today's show. We want to remind you that we will be taking off the roundtable for this summer, and the end of the school year is approaching, and that's when our roundtable season takes place, pretty much the school year, from late August through May. So we've probably got 4 weeks left in our roundtable season, and we will take the summer off and come back in late August for the fall sports. So just a handful of shows left here for the roundtable for this season. So the school year is coming to an end quite quickly, and it seems like it does here in the last, or as soon as basketball ends, it seems like it's just like that, and the school year's over. So we've still got a few weeks left here for the roundtable, Saturdays at 10 a.m. So look forward to the last handful of shows we've got here for the roundtable. And let's take a look at some sports results over the last few days here in the area. And starting with some high school baseball, it took place yesterday. Bernie defeated New Madrid County Central 8-4. No problem for the Bernie Mules. Bernie Mules have had a good week, which we'll talk more about a couple of games they've had this week. And also we had Thursday, Dexter over New Madrid County Central 4-3. Bernie over Bloomfield, big 14-0. They're in the Stoddard County Conference. Also, we've got Chatfield over Woodland, big 11-1. Poplar Bluff over Greene County Tech of Arkansas, 8-1. Orion over Scott County Central, 13-2. Greenville over Doniphan, that's 5-4. East Carter County over Neelyville, 5-2, and that's Neelyville's first loss of the season. Neelyville's been on a great run so far this year with an unbeaten record until I think that was Thursday. Neelyville Tigers dropped one to the East Carter County Redbirds. And also we've got Bernie over Advance in high school softball, 4-0. And also sticking with softball, Bernie over New Madrid County Central, 10-6. Woodland over Delta, 8-5. Scott City over New Madrid County Central, 11-6. Neelyville over East Carter County, 4-2. Leopold over Oak Ridge in a shutout, 15-0. Clearwater over Twin Rivers, 10-3. And also we've got Bernie over Bloomfield, big in the Stoddard County Conference, 15-0. And that's all for your baseball and softball results over the last few days. And as we mentioned, a few weeks left in this spring season. Always a quick season for the spring sports. But we'll be sure to keep you updated right here on the Roundtable and the Sports Zone throughout the week on YHC News. To keep you updated with all the area sports results in Southeast Missouri and Northeast Arkansas. And we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be back with Travis Quatermas, going to go over those baseball state rankings and also what's been happening over the past few weeks in the spring sports. And we'll be back with that coming up.
Welcome to NFL Total Access,
the show that takes you inside the locker room and down on the field. With inside access to all 32 teams all year long. NFL Total Access, Monday through Saturday, only on NFL Network.
NFL Network, where football season never ends.
I chose Three Rivers College. Caring staff made it easy to enroll. I'm receiving affordable, quality college classes. Day, evening, and online classes let me work college into my schedule.
With locations throughout Southeast Missouri and over 200 course offerings, including online courses, Three Rivers can help you earn a college or career technical degree.
I chose Three Rivers College. You should too.
Enroll today. Learn more at trcc.edu. Three Rivers College. Success starts here.
First Midwest Bank Gold Club offers special privileges for our friends who are age 50 or better and have combined deposits of $5,000. Members enjoy trips, cruises, seminars, and picnics along with free personalized bank services. Upcoming trips include Journey Through the Holy Land, Yellowstone in winter, Classic Ireland, and Hawaiian Paradise Cruise. Stop by any First Midwest Bank location to sign up for the Gold Club. It's absolutely free. First Midwest Bank, providing common sense financial solutions every day.
And we're back, and along with Travis Quatermas to talk about some local sports results here the last few weeks, and also we're going to touch on some baseball state rankings. So the weather's played out pretty good. Usually it's hard to get in these games in the spring for the most part with all the weather, but not too bad so far.
Cool and rainy, but the weather's turning warmer. So, yeah, things will definitely heat up, literally and figuratively here with spring sports.
Sure. And before we get into discussion here locally, let's touch on the baseball state rankings for this week, and a little bit of shakeup in those rankings for this week as they shake up quite a bit, especially when it comes to baseball for these state rankings. And in Class 1, Cairo moves up to number 1 this week. New Franklin drops to number 2. Oran at number 3, 4 Santa Fe, 5 Dadeville, 6 Atlanta, 7 Sturgeon, 8 Tuscumbia, 9 Leopold, and 10 Weyblu. And you see there Leopold and Oran, they're in the top 10 for Class 1 from our area. Now in Class 2, with the rankings, Chaffee still on top at number 1. And right behind him is Valley Catholic from St. Genevieve, 3 Hartville, 4 Neelyville, 5 Sacred Heart, 6 East Carter County, 7 Thayer, 8 Holcomb, 9 Kenton, and 10 Skyline. So we got quite a few teams there from the SEMO area with Holcomb, Thayer, East Carter, Neelyville, Valley Catholic, and Chaffee. So very competitive Class 2 this year in high school baseball. And in Class 3, Springfield Catholic, the defending Class 3 state champions at number 1, 2 Forsyth, 3 Cuba, 4 Mountain Grove, 5 Palmyra, 6 Lutheran of St. Charles, 7 Blair Oaks, 8 Conway, 9 Blue Eye Christian of O'Fallon, and 10 Sherwood. And Class 4, Westminster Christian at number 1, 2 Notre Dame out of Cape Girardeau, 3 Logan Rogersville, 4 Sykeston, 5 Lutheran South, 6 Smithville, 7 Boonville, 8 Pembroke Hill, 9 Oak Grove, 10 Marshfield. So we got a couple in there with Sykeston and Notre Dame in the top 10 in Class 4. And in Class 5, Francis Howell at number 1, 2 CBC, Christian Brothers College, 3 Liberty North, 4 Vianney, 5 Parkway South, 6 Blue Springs South, 7 Lee Summit West, 8 Rockhurst, 9 Willard, and 10 Neosho. And those are the baseball state rankings from the Missouri Baseball High School, or Missouri High School Baseball Coaches Association for this week. So as we see there, got quite a few teams in those top 10 across the classifications, and especially Class 2, very competitive classification this year in high school baseball, which it's been competitive over the last few years, but you got about 5 teams there in the top 10 just from Southeast Missouri.
Well, SEMO's always been very strong in high school baseball. We saw that last year with 3 teams in the Final Four, Oran winning the state championship, Holcomb and New Madrid made it all the way to the Final Four as well. And you're seeing that again this year. Going to make for some exciting districts, especially in Class 2, because a lot of those teams are going to be competing against each other. So they won't all make it to Columbia, but another great season for high school baseball here in Southeast Missouri.
Certainly. As you see there, we saw this last week, East Carter defeated Neelyville, and Neelyville's had a really good year going back to even last year. And East Carter getting the victory over Neelyville. But as you see those baseball rankings, they'll change quite a bit, and that's the one different thing about baseball than the other sports, and softball can go in this as well. But your team for that day is pretty much as good as your pitching. And
That's
you
right.
got to have a rotation of 4 or 5 kids with your starting pitching, and your ace number 1 guy's not as strong as your 4 or 5 guys not as strong as your ace guy at number 1. So that's why you'll see teams defeat a really good team one day, and then just a few days later drop to a mediocre team. So you see a lot of fluctuation when it comes to performance.
That's true, especially during the regular season. That balances out somewhat in the postseason because you really only need, in high school baseball, you need 2 really good pitchers that can carry you all the way to the Final Four. But and there's some teams in Southeast Missouri that aren't ranked that are very capable of making a playoff push. I was surprised, frankly, not to see Poplar Bluff ranked in the Class 5 top 10. They're undefeated as far as I know. And we saw earlier a good victory there over Greene County Tech, 8-1 earlier this week. They come to Dexter Monday afternoon to play our local Bearcats at 4 o'clock. So that'll be a good test for Dexter, who's had a little bit of an up and down season with a young squad. I think they're 4-4 after their come from behind victory over New Madrid the other day. But New Madrid's certainly capable of making a push. You can't overlook a team like Kennett, who just hung a 3-1 loss on Sykeston, who's ranked in the top 10. Malden, you can't ever count them out. Malden's very strong. With some smaller schools, even schools like Risco and Cooter. Cooter's always got a very strong baseball program. They played Doran very close. It was 4-3, 3-2, a 1-run game here just a few days ago. So even teams that you don't see ranked, they definitely have the athletes and the pitching to make some noise and pull some upsets.
Sure. And taking a look at Class 2, you mentioned Holcomb made it to the Final Four last year. They're right there in the mix once again. Neelaville right in there, East Carter County. And I think there's another one in there that I'm leaving out.
Chaffee ranked number 1.
Yeah, Chaffee.
They're 13-1.
Yeah, Chaffee at number 1. And Chaffee's one of those schools like Cooter. They're in Class 1 that's strong year in and year out. And they've gotten off to a good start and performed quite well so far this year. And they're certainly going to make a push for that Class 2 as well.
You got Oran ranked at number 3 in Class 1 right now, and they're the defending state champs. There was some people that wondered maybe would there be a little bit of a drop-off with a coaching change over there. Of course, their longtime legendary coach, Mitch Wood, retired after finally getting that state championship after falling short on several occasions, and then he retired, and you got a new man coming in. And then they had a new man that had to replace the other new man, if I remember correctly. So, but they just don't seem to have dropped off much at all, if any. So they'll be a contender to win back-to-back Class 1 state championships there in baseball.
And we've seen Sykeston kind of take a dip. Sykeston was one of those teams year in and year out that really dominated high school baseball when it comes to the larger schools, but they've kind of hit a valley, but now they're starting to get stronger and having a good year so far this year.
Well, their pitching is outstanding. That's what's carried Sykeston so far. They've struggled offensively at times. I mentioned just a moment ago they dropped a 3-1 loss to Kennett, and then they had I think Poplar Bluff beat them by the same score not a couple of weeks ago. So they can struggle swinging the sticks, but their pitching puts them right there with a chance to beat anybody on any given day.
Yeah, and that's, like you said, like we were talking, the pitching really takes you in baseball.
Well, that's the name of the game in baseball. You got to have pitching. That's good pitching beats good hitting, and if you don't have it,
if you don't have the pitching, you've got to have a very strong lineup 1 through 9 to make up for it. So got to really put up the runs at that point. So, and you mentioned Kennett. Kennett's right there with a really strong team. They'll beat some good teams like Sykeston, and then they'll drop one to Crothersville.
That was a head scratcher.
Yeah.
Crothersville's dominant in football and basketball, but they've not been a baseball power in Southeast Missouri. And they didn't just beat Kennett; they really put it on them the other day, 13-1 or something like that. They beat them by a 10-run rule. So that was a bit of a head scratcher there. But you can't count Kennett out. They're going to be right there year in, year out. Always got such a good program.
Yeah, always a lot of talent on that team, and and a talent that we're familiar with. Kevontae Mitchell, one of the top baseball players around, and
exactly,
he's for the Indians this year. So I'd like to watch him play baseball. I hear good things about him. I've seen him on the basketball court for the past 4 years,
and everybody says he's a better baseball player than he is a basketball player. In fact, there's quite a bit of buzz that he's probably going to be drafted by some Major League Baseball team right out of high school. Whether he'll choose to accept that or play college ball, we don't know yet, but he's very, very talented, no doubt about it.
Yeah, man. Unfortunate for Kennett, the basketball season, he
Yes.
had an injury at the end of their season.
Broke his hand,
Yeah.
against Dexter. And I think he scored 40 points in that game.
Yeah. Well, actually, I think I actually talked to Jim Vaughn, coach, and he actually broke it in practice.
Did
but
he?
Played
Okay.
with it against the Bearcats, which was his last game
Yes.
until they found out exactly what it was. And he had a big game, 30 points, I think,
Yeah.
with a broken
Yeah.
hand. So that
Yeah,
just goes to show the talent that he's got.
Right, he's a phenomenal athlete, just all around. He didn't play football, but in terms of basketball and baseball, just probably the premier athlete in Southeast Missouri, I would say.
Yeah, he's certainly fine talent. Just think if he did play football, he'd excel there certainly as
no
well.
question about it. Yeah, his athletic ability would just enable him to excel no matter what sport he competed in.
Yeah, so that's something he'll be able to recover from and move on to the next level, whether it's college or professional. So
And he's having a great baseball season too, from what I understand. So I know Kennett's looking forward to. They've got high expectations down there, as they always do. They've got a great baseball program.
yeah. And moving over to softball a little bit, and we've seen quite a bit of up and down this year. It's kind of hard to gauge who's really playing the best in Southeast Missouri. It seems like New Madrid County Central has always been tough in the spring, and they've taken some hits on the chin this year so far this spring. And Bernie's been one of those teams here of late, the past few weeks, that have been playing well. They started out slow, had a really hard time managing the errors defensively, but they've started to come along with some impressive victories here, I think, over Bloomfield and New Madrid County Central. And there's some fine softball teams in the spring, and now we're going to be able to see them compete towards the state championship in the spring. I know they've always had the state tournament, district and state tournaments in the fall, but now they're going to have one for the spring as well. So we'll be able to see those teams go forward towards district and state championships here later this spring.
Well, I know that's something that's been talked about for a while, because the schools, and it's usually the larger schools, that only offer softball for their girls in the spring, and they don't get to play in the fall when the playoffs are traditionally been held. And they've always felt a little bit cheated. So this year, I think Misha did the right thing. They put the playoff system into place for spring softball. A little bit of an unusual format. There's just one class. Mm-hmm. And all the schools that play spring softball are all in one class, and they're divided up into small districts. In fact, Dexter's district just has Bernie and Bloomfield, I think, and Dexter's beaten both of those teams, so they position themselves well, at least as far as district is concerned. But it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out and how that format evolves going forward.
Yeah.
But yeah, softball is really hard to get a handle on in the spring, or rather in the fall during the regular season. So anything can happen as far as that goes.
They're keeping the state district and state tournaments in the fall as well. There's just going to be 2 seasons, fall and spring. And if you look at the makeup, most of the teams that play in the spring are from the west and the east, or southwest and southeast parts of the state. So actually what they're doing, like you said, there's one class because there's not as many schools that play in the spring as in the fall. So that's why they're only having one class.
Right.
And not only that, they're going to alternate the state championships from Springfield and Poplar Bluff. So it'll alternate
that'd be
year
nice.
to year.
Be
So
right
I
in
think
our backyard.
I think this year it's over in Springfield, if I'm not mistaken, and next year it'll be in Poplar Bluff. So and that's how they break that down. They're if you look at the map, that they're all the teams are in the southwest and southeast part of the state, and they're going to alternate those state championship sites from Poplar Bluff and Southwest Missouri. I think that'll be in Springfield. So it'll and the thing is, we've always had competitive softball, really good teams in the spring, and it's hard to gauge how good they are because they're not playing in any kind of district competition or potential state tournament competition. You're comparing your really good teams you see in the fall with your really good teams you see in the spring, and it's hard to it's hard to match those up, and
That's right.
see who's well. Which there are some schools that play in the fall and spring, but it's good to see how good these teams really are here in the spring now.
Well, and that'll be interesting to see who brings the state championship home here with the spring softball. And there's several teams here in southeast Missouri that are certainly capable. I know one very good team, the Clearwater Lady Tigers, seem to always be strong year in and year out in girls softball. So I think they'll be a team to watch. Dexter and Bernie have both been pretty solid as well. So we'll just keep our eye on it and see how things develop.
Yeah. And, of course, other spring sports going on as well. Track and field, very competitive throughout the area. And, we always see Sykeston with a really good track and field team year in and year out. But, you'll see a lot of individuals from different schools that really stand out. I know Malden typically has a pretty good track program.
Charleston.
And, Charleston's right there in the mix. And New Madrid will have individuals performing well in track and field as well. Haven't been able to keep up with the track and field as much this year, but we'll certainly be keeping an eye on that. Do you have anything to add in that regard?
Well, I know the Sykeston had just, I think it was last week, had their big annual Twilight Relays competition, and they won first place there. Charleston hosted their big invitational recently, and they won first place again with that. So those are two schools that are traditionally pretty dominant in track in southeast Missouri. One young lady in Dexter to keep your eye on again this year is Michaela Waldner. She qualified as a freshman in 3 events last year, the 100 and 300 meter hurdles, and then the long jump. And I have no doubt she'll probably be back in all 3 of those as well. So the Dexter track and field team seems to be improved this year, especially on the boys' side. I think they just have one home meet, and I believe it's this week, maybe Thursday. We might double check that for our viewers, but yeah, track that was a sport that I grew up with over at Kelly, where I went to high school. There was no football back then, and when it comes spring, it was baseball or track.
You did the hurdles, right?
Yeah, that was me. I was and the pole high jumper as well. Now I tended to stick to the relays, but. Anyway, track's a great sport, and it really doesn't get enough coverage. Those kids work very hard. They're in great shape, especially the long distance runners. It really takes some skill. Of course, you just have to have natural speed, but you have to learn to jump those hurdles. And believe it or not, when it comes to the relay races, it takes some skill. It takes a lot of practice to master handing the baton off. That's where you win and lose the relay races. Yeah. And there's been a lot of good teams that either run out of their zone or drop the baton and they're disqualified. So, but if Dexter, if I'm correct in thinking that the Dexter Open Invitational is this Thursday, you ought to come out and watch it, because I'm sure Sykeston will be there, Charleston will be there, and you'll see some of the top athletes in southeast Missouri in track, and that'll be exciting.
Yeah. And one thing I've always...
Boys and girls, by the way. It's boys and girls.
One thing I've always liked about track and field in the fall, really good football teams we have and great talent, especially, receiver, running back. You see how fast these guys are, and it's like, man, I want to, you want to know who's faster than who out there.
Yeah.
And most of the time they're doing track. So you got to wait till the spring season to see these guys match up in the 100 meters, 200 meters. And then that's when you get to see how fast these guys really are. And that's one thing I've really enjoyed about, the track season, is seeing the sprinters from the fall season in football get out on the track and seeing their raw speed out there on the track.
And I really enjoy the field part of track and field as well. The pole vaulters and the high jumpers, the long jumpers, the triple jumpers. Triple jump is really a neat event to watch, and that's one that takes some practice to get that hop, skip, and a jump down and not disqualify yourself by crossing the line before you actually jump. But the shot put and the discus throwers, man, you talk about the football players, those big linemen are down there, but you come back in the spring, you're going to see those guys out there throwing the shot put and the discus. And again, you see just how powerful they are. So, and a lot of these young men and women, they're going to be at Columbia, in a few weeks, competing for a state championship. And Southeast Missouri always represents itself well in track and field.
Yeah. I heard about the big showdown a couple years ago with Brandon Bourbon
from Potosi. Yeah.
And his name's going to escape me. Stevenson, Jadarius Stevenson from New Madrid, which they are the top backs in the area. Mm-hmm. And they went at it quite a bit there in football when it comes to the state tournament. And they went at it in the 100 meters, and I think it was Brandon Bourbon was just a little faster than Jadarius Stevenson.
Yeah.
And I didn't get to see it myself, but they said it was fun to watch. Those guys in the 100 meters just neck and neck right there for the top speed runner in the area. And that they were such exceptional running backs in football, and to see them go head to head on the track in the spring was certainly something to see.
Of course, Bourbon has gone on. He's had a great college career playing football for the University of Kansas. He'll be a senior out there, I believe, this year. I remember when my oldest son, Logan, was a freshman when Brandon Bourbon was a senior, and they played Potosi in the first round of the playoffs. Had to go up there to play them. And he said, we watched film, and we thought we were ready for him, but it was just I think he ran for over 300 yards that game, 4 or 5 touchdowns, and he said we just couldn't touch him. I mean, he was just phenomenally fast. And there's been a lot of that. Back when I was in high school at Sykeston, they had a kid named Carlos Draper, and he was so fast that he got a full ride to LSU on a track scholarship. And he was just, he's just like a lightning bolt up and down the track in the 100-meter and the 200-meter and on some of the relay events. You knew you had to beat them before he got the baton or it was done.
Yeah.
But Sykeston always has some lightning fast athletes like that, and Charleston does as well. And you mentioned Kennett and Malden, some of those schools, New Madrid. So it'll be fun. Jackson's always very competitive in track and field, as you'd expect them to be, being a big school. So if you can get out and watch a track meet, check your local high school schedules. If they offer track and field, it's fun to get out there and watch them.
Sure is. And we're going to take a quick break and transition into some stories that's developed over the last week throughout many sports over the year. And we're going to take a break and talk about those coming up.
Okay, you're hooked up and ready to go.
New Wave knows you're excited about sports, so now's a great time to get connected with the Triple Play package. Crystal clear TV, high-speed internet, and telephone for only $99.99 a month for 12 months. With New Wave Communications, you've got game. In addition to unlimited calling, New Wave telephone users have a wide range of great phone features available. And now with the help of New Wave Internet, they're even easier to use thanks to our convenient online phone manager. Just log on to your MyWave portal. Now phone features like call forwarding can be set up instantly from any computer. Reliably activate or deactivate your call forwarding, and even set your home phone to ring once when a call is forwarded. Home telephone service made even better with New Wave Communications. Call today.
And we're back, and we're going to transition into some stories that have developed over this last week in high school athletics throughout the area. And we'll just start right here in local Dexter. It's been reported this week that Rob Nichols has offered his resignation as Dexter boys varsity basketball coach after 7 seasons, so he will no longer serve in that position as boys basketball coach here in Dexter. And the search is underway for a new coach here in Dexter. But Rob steps down and looking for a new coach, and all indications at this point that Josh Dowdy's a likely candidate for that coaching position, and he's been coaching the middle school teams for quite a few years, so that's one name out there. We'll see how that develops going forward, and we'll just see going forward. But Rob Nichols steps down, and new coaching search underway for Dexter.
Well, Rob has been the head basketball coach here for 7 seasons. Overall record is 75 and 99. So his resignation wasn't totally unexpected. My understanding was he offered his resignation last year and the board didn't accept it. I think given all the injuries that Dexter had a season ago, they felt like he deserved another chance. But he had a very young team to work with this year, just 2 seniors by season's end. But Rob's a great guy. He's a great coach, and I'm sure he's going to go on to have a very successful career. Coach Dowdy, if he ends up being the man here in Dexter, has a good resume. He's a local Dexter product. Had good runs at both Advance and Puxico. And then, as you mentioned, he's had great success with the Dexter middle school boys basketball teams. So he's certainly a very qualified candidate. So as you say, he seems to be the leading candidate for the position, but they may choose to look outside and see who may be available, who may be interested. But whoever comes in is going to inherit some talented young basketball players. If they would grow 3 or 4 more inches, that would help tremendously. But in terms of in terms of talent and working hard, especially in that sophomore and freshman classes, you've got some really, really talented basketball players. So I think the future is bright for Dexter basketball.
Yeah, Dexter took their lumps this year, but they had a young team. They played a lot of sophomores. Played 3 or 4 sophomores on the team this year
as starters.
Yeah, so when you're competing with sophomores, first time playing varsity basketball in the CMO Conference, going to be certainly a tough challenge here in the CMO Conference. So there's some talent there in that sophomore class coming up, and over the next 2 years they'll certainly be a tougher team as they've been over the past couple of years. So that'll be certainly interesting to see how that develops over the next few seasons. But we'll see how it goes forward. Rob, great guy. He's always been good to us, communicating with us and being on our show from time to time, and wish him the best of luck going forward with anything that he does. So certainly wish him the best going forward. Some other coaching changes in the area. We know Dustin Ferguson, coach at Clarkton, for this past year, for his first year at Clarkton, moves on to Hayti. He's going to take the Hayti coaching position, which Philip Taylor is going to be out at that position there at Hayti. Dustin Ferguson moves on down to Hayti, so that was quite a story there. Hayti been one of the best teams in the area among the small schools, and Dustin Ferguson leading Clarkton to their first district championship since 2009, I believe, and makes his way down to Hayti. So that was one developing story this week as well.
Yeah, that was a bit of a surprise to me, I have to admit. Coach Ferguson in his first year at Clarkton had such a great season, a district championship, and he's got a real talented team coming back. They're not losing a whole lot to graduation. And with the district realignments, I mean, that district next year is just Clarkton's to lose, basically, with Risco being moved out, Scott County Central moving up to Class 2. So they've got an opportunity for a really deep playoff run. But he makes the decision. I'm sure he thinks it's best for his family. Hayti's got a very talented, storied program as well. They're just 2 years removed from a Final Four appearance, and he's got some talent coming back there, especially with Brandon Burden coming back. So there's some good ball players and a good opportunity. Hayti moving up to Class 3, so a little bit more of a challenge, but I'm sure he's up to it. And Tyler, that really leads to a lot of speculation as far as Clarkton is concerned as to whether or not Coach David Heap will step back onto the sidelines. He is the first-year principal at Clarkton. He had moved from Caruthersville down to Zenith and coached there 1 year, and then was offered and accepted the principal's job at Clarkton. So you have to wonder, is David going to want to step back onto the sidelines after a year off? Has he got that itch again to coach, or will they look outside and him being content to remain there in the administration? So that's something to keep our eye on as far as Clarkton basketball is concerned.
Yeah, we'll see. And it's been very competitive there in Hayti. They've had competitive teams over the last couple of years. Went to the Final Four a couple of years ago, and Dustin going down there after having a good season there. And
Clarkton. Dustin's a Clarkton guy too.
Yeah.
He was the last time they won districts, I think he was a senior on that team.
Yeah.
So again, that was a little bit. I think it surprised a lot of observers that he was going to leave Clarkton after just 1 year. But as I said, evidently he thinks that's a great opportunity for himself and his family. And no doubt he's right. Our Hayti is a very good program.
Yeah, a lot of talent. Year in and year out there at Hayti. So it's not like he's going down it.
Oh no.
He's taking a lesser job than he had. So
and it's a step up from Class 1 to Class 3. And so you think that's, as far as his career advancement's concerned. Yeah. As a young coach, when you have an opportunity to make a big step like that, I'm sure it was too good an opportunity to pass up.
Yeah. You say Class 3. It was Class 2. Now it's Class 3.
Now it's Class 2.
And that's what we're going to transition to here now with the reclassifications of the basketball classes for this coming year. And they do this every 2 years, and quite a bit of shakeup this time around.
Yes.
We're seeing quite a few teams move up in class. We've had a few that's going to be moving down, but most notably from Class 2 to Class 3 are the notable schools. Hayti among one that you mentioned from Class 2 to Class 3. Also, Portageville going to be moving up from that Class 2 to Class 3, and Zenith Hornersville moving up from 2 to 3. Those are the three main schools that are moving up from 2 to 3. Am I missing out?
I don't think so.
Okay,
I think that's it.
The one from 2 to 3. Also, we've got a few moving up from 1 to 2. Most notably, Scott County Central.
Right.
Moving up from 1 to 2. That's the main jump there.
That's the big one. I mean, they've just dominated Class 1 for so many years. And you know, there's got to be a lot of schools, Class 1 schools in Missouri, that were probably throwing a party. In particular, over in Risco and Clarkton, probably, and Leopold. Those are three schools. They've always had great teams, district championship teams, and then bam, you run into the Braves, and that's just been the hurdle nobody's been able to clear here in the last few years. So. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of teams here in Missouri in Class 1 that are glad to see Scott Central go. And I'm sure there's a lot of Class 2 teams that are unhappy to see them come.
Yep, certainly. And I'm trying to think if there's any other Class 1s that went up to 2. I know Scott County Central was the big one, but I can't think of any other ones.
We had a couple that moved down. Moran and Advance moved down
Advance
from Class 2 to Class 1.
That makes it quite a bit. It still makes it pretty competitive there in Class 1, because Advance has had a pretty good run just in Class 2.
They sure have. And, some teams that have played in one district for the last few years have now been moved. I mentioned a moment ago with the Clark, the Clarkton and Risco have battled over District 1 for years. But now Risco gets moved out of that district. So, that you would think, again, coming into this season, given the talent they have coming back, that Clarkton would be the hands-down favorite to come away with another district championship. But Risco gets moved over there with Oran and Advance and a couple of those other competitive schools. Charleston, interestingly enough, gets moved way out west. They've been in Class 3, District 1 for a lot of years with Caruthersville and New Madrid. But then they get moved out west to the district that Clearwater has won the last 2 or 3 seasons. And I'm sure the fans in Clearwater are not happy about that, because they've run into Charleston in the quarterfinals. And
that's strange, because,
or in sectionals, rather, and haven't been able to get by them the last 2 years.
That's strange, because Charleston's probably the most eastern team of Class 3 in that District 1. You've got teams as far as west as Twin Rivers.
Exactly.
In that district.
Doniphan.
Doniphan.
So yeah, but they stay and Charleston moves. So you just almost have to wonder if the folks down at Misha just didn't start throwing, darts at a map of Missouri, saying we're going to move this team here and that team there. Some of them just don't make a whole lot of sense geographically. Leopold's another team that's got to be disappointed, because they finally, they haven't been able to get past Scott Central, even though they've had 2 really, really good teams. In fact, Leopold gave Scott Central the best game of anybody in the postseason as the Braves rolled to their, 16th state championship. And now you think, okay, we get rid of Scott Central, and now here's this district that's ours for the taking, and they move them back out west with South Iron and Eminence, 2 of the best Class 1 programs in the state of Missouri. In fact, Eminence, the one year that Scott Central didn't win a state title, Eminence won the state title. So, the folks, they've really got to be disappointed to get moved out of that district and shipped back out west, which, again, just doesn't make any sense geographically. But that's the way it goes, and you've got to learn to live with it and play with it, and you can't use it as an excuse. You got to use it as motivation.
Yeah, a lot of people look forward to these reclassifications because you try to get a little better luck with the district you're drawn with and your pairings potentially in state tournament play, and it seems like it doesn't really work out for as many schools the way they would hope. There's a lot of shake-up, but the way I look at it, a lot of teams don't end up in a better position. It seems like if a team moves out, there's either a team moves in or you go to a district that's more competitive. It just seems like it always works out that way. People always look forward to that every 2 years. Oh well, I hope this happens. I hope this happens, and then something will happen. But nothing really changes to anyone's benefit greatly.
I know the folks in Dexter were sure hoping they'd get moved out of Class 4 District 1 with Sykeston and Cape and Kennett and Notre Dame. That's really a tough nut to crack. That's probably the toughest district in the whole state. But, you know, it is what it is. You just have to make the best of it.
Yeah. So we'll see, but I'm sure there's teams saying 2 more years. So wait 2 more years.
You know, I know the folks in New Madrid and Caruthersville have to be celebrating that Charleston got moved out. Even in Hayti now, they moved up to that district. So Portageville as well. That was a little bit of a surprise. I didn't think Portageville's enrollment had grown to the point that they would move out of Class 2.
I don't really, and the thing
they've been
is,
Class 2 for years.
And the thing is, the enrollment.
They've got to be right there on the.
They've been in Class 3 before. It was probably in the mid 2000s. They bumped up to Class 3 and then back to Class 2. But the enrollment, when these teams go up, it's not as if their enrollment has increased. They've really changed the numbers. What classifies as a Class 1 school, Class 2, Class 3? Because I think what they've done this year, and I didn't look exactly at the cutoffs, but I think they've just tried to even the amount of teams in Class 1, 2, and 3 to even number of teams rather than just a number, a cutoff number, and saying anything less, you're this class. I think they've tried to scatter the teams evenly.
Well, I understand the number, but you really have to take that in. If they're not taking enrollment into account, they really need to, because especially in a sport like football, I mean, it may not be as much of a difference in basketball where it's more 5-on-5, and one good player can really take a game over. But in a sport like football, where it's all about numbers, you know, and if you don't have the numbers to draw from, it really makes it more difficult to compete with a school that may be in the same class but may have a much larger enrollment. So I think that needs to be factored in a little bit more when it comes to how they decide what class the school fits into.
The state, Missouri State High School Activity Association, they've always had a tough time with the smaller classifications because that makes up the bulk of the teams in the state of Missouri. You've got 5 in basketball. You got 5 classes, but a great majority are from classes 1 through 3. Class 4 and 5, there's not that many, and that's what they've always had a tough time trying to even out the teams. I know when they had 4 classes up until 2003 is when they went to 5 classes. I remember, in Class 1 and 2, you had an extra round of a state tournament. Now the state tournaments are 16 teams, and at that time they were 32. They had a regional round right after districts, and heck, some of the districts would have 12 teams in the district going at it for district championships. So you really had a lot of teams. They tried to break that up, and that's why.
And that was definitely a good move. In fact, there was a rumor that at some point they were considering going to 6 classes in basketball.
I hope they spare us from that. That's just a little too much there. It spreads it out way too much, I think, with 6 classes. But hard job they've got up there to try to even things out, especially with the smaller schools. But classes of 4 and 5 didn't change hardly, if any. I didn't notice any teams here locally, especially that moved any. I don't think they even messed with the numbers there.
No, I don't recall any changes there. I just mentioned, Class 4 District 1. I think that's left unchanged. A lot of people expected Cape Central to move back up to Class 5, but they remained in Class 4. So, but yeah, no major shakeups there. Of course, we only have 2 Class 5 schools in all of Southeast Missouri with Jackson and Poplar Bluff, and they remain in the same district. So, we'll see how it works out going forward. Certainly going to, at least we know for sure, we're going to have a new Class 1 state champion. With Scott Central moving up to Class 2. And that's going to be real interesting with Scott Central moving into that district with Bernie and South Pemiscot and Holcomb. So that's going to really create a shakeup there. In terms of the competitive balance and the teams you're used to seeing that aren't going to be there anymore, that you don't have to worry with no more. And it affects the rivalries. Hayti and Bernie and Hayti and South Pemiscot, Bernie and Holcomb. Well, those became real big regular season matchups because they had such district implications. Well, now that's no longer there. Now you have new rivalries forming and probably some scheduling changes that we'll see coming up because they're going to get a look at these teams during the regular season. So it's going to be real interesting to see all the effects on high school basketball going forward.
Yeah, you see, schools become so accustomed to classifications, though. You think of Scott County Central, Class 1. Portageville, Class 2. Especially those two schools. Portageville, you just think of Class 2. They've had so much success there in Class 2.
Right.
Same thing with Scott County Central, so it's just strange to see Scott County, which Scott County has won a state championship at Class 2 many years ago.
Right.
And Portageville up in Class 3, that's just a little steep for them when they've been in Class 3. Once you get up playing Charleston, New Madrid, Crothersville, it's just a little steeper way to go for the Portageville Bulldogs. But we'll see how it all plays out starting this next season with these reclassifications. I'm trying to think of anything else that's developed over the week.
Well, one big, as far as collegiate sports go, one major story that, of course, affects all of Missouri is the move of Coach Frank Haith from Mizzou to Tulsa.
Yeah.
Which was, I think, a little bit unexpected, caught a lot of people off guard. So he's moving out there, and we'll see who the next head coach at Mizzou will be. They've really had a difficult time, since the resignation of the longtime coach there, Norm Stewart. It's been kind of a revolving door at Mizzou. It seemed like every 2 or 3 years, and then you had some controversy there with Quinn Snyder and then Mike Anderson, and then of course this lately here with Frank Haith's tenure, with some of the players being suspended for one reason or another. So this is going to be a real important decision for Mike Alden, the AD up there. He really needs to find somebody who's going to bring some stability to that program, which will help them with recruiting. So that's going to be real interesting to watch. And then how about our SEMO baseball team?
Yeah.
Well, the Red Hawks are on fire. Mike Beasley's doing a great job up there. They just beat SLU. So, they're first place in the Ohio Valley Conference. So big things to look forward to there, I think, is that the SEMO Red Hawks baseball season comes along.
Yeah. And speaking of the Frank Haith deal, that was kind of a surprise, but I started to think about that, and I'm trying to make sense of it. And my best explanation of it is, Frank Haith's had a pretty rough go so far. I would think that would be accurate to say. And, his job might be in jeopardy in the next year or so. So you take a team like Tulsa, had a really good year. Danny Manning leaving that job for, I think, Wake Forest. He took that Wake Forest position there in ACC. Tulsa is a pretty good place to be right now. A lot of enthusiasm around that program, and I think it was easier for him to accept that job rather than potentially being fired.
Well, you would have to think at some point he saw the proverbial handwriting on the wall and saw that he didn't have much of a future at Mizzou. And so you're right, Tulsa seems to be that's a program on the rise. So good luck to him, and going to be real interesting to see who Mizzou brings in. They really need to go out and find a real top caliber candidate. You're going to they got the new SEC network coming in, so they're going to have some extra money to work with in terms of the athletic department, and they really need to go out and find a top tier coaching candidate that will commit to the long term, who's going to bring in quality athletes, quality in terms of not only just their on the court performance, but their off the court performance. Just saw the suspension of our DGB, right, from the Mizzou football team. That was a real disappointment. So some controversy, some shakeup going on up there at Columbia in a lot of different ways, and hopefully they'll find their way through that.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing around the SEMO football program. There's been a lot of talk, excitement, a lot of enthusiasm. This Coach Tukowitz is really getting people amped up for the football season coming up. They've had a good spring practice, and that's one thing to look forward to next fall is the SEMO football program. And they've gotten quite a few kids here locally. Demetrius Luster from Hayti, also Daryl Monroe from Crothersville, and if they can get those guys to the field in the fall, and the other guys they brought in for recruiting, Valley Catholic. Yeah. There's a lot of enthusiasm around that football program right now.
Absolutely. So, and I really like how SEMO is focusing on Southeast Missouri. I think that's one reason that a lot of the local fans just weren't excited about what was going on at SEMO. It was just a bunch of kids from Florida and California, and there was no tie. But whether it's football, girls basketball, boys basketball, we saw J.T. Jones from Sykeston just offered a preferred walk-on status. So, and what that means is he's got a spot on the team. He doesn't have to try out like other walk-ons would. He just doesn't have at this point an athletic scholarship. But still, he's a local guy. Hannah No here from Dexter, one of our Lady Bearcats, going up to play for the SEMO Lady Redhawks. So, and then you mentioned Coach Toot bringing in all the local talent here from Southeast Missouri, and he's really breathed some new life, a breath of fresh air onto that football team. So great things to look forward to, I think, for SEMO athletics.
Yeah, a lot of enthusiasm to look forward to here in the next year. So we'll see how.
I know I'm looking forward to going seeing some football games this year. Hadn't been a lot to look forward to up there for a while, but I think he's going to build a great program here. I think they finally found the right guy for the job.
Yeah, and that's a tough program. We at Southeast, we've just never really had a consistent, competitive team year in and year out. We had one of the breakout seasons a couple years ago.
Right, and that was about it. That was typical for SEMO. Once a decade, we'd come along with a really good team. But the basketball program seems to be on the uprise. And, of course, we've talked about the success of the baseball team. Track and gymnastics always been very strong for SEMO, but those are more low-profile sports, not getting as much media attention. So good to see SEMO stepping up and really being competitive.
Yeah, on the right track there. I know Mark on the athletic director. It seems like ever since he's come around, it's really, there's a lot more enthusiasm. Not only that, performance on the fields have done
Dickie
quite
Nutt
well.
just gets an extension, a 2-year extension. I know a lot of people were disappointed in the lack of success the SEMO Redhawks had this year, given the fact that they were ranked so high in the preseason. But that program is is trending in the right direction. People, I think, we tend to have short memories, and we forget how bad SEMO was before Coach Nutt got to Cape Girardeau. So he's had to rebuild that program, and now he's just now getting to the point where he can really start bringing in some top-notch recruits. And so I think that program is trending in the right direction. I was glad to see him get an extension.
A little misfortune this year. Before the season started, had, I think, one of their best 1 or 2 players just walk away from the program, and it's no way to start a season. So a little misfortune in that
They've got some good talent coming back, and they've already recruited some good talent to come in and fill the spots that they're going to be losing to graduation or transfers. So I think things are headed in the right direction for SEMO in football and basketball.
Yeah, we'll see how it all plays out. Trying to think if there's anything else locally that we may have missed out on, but I think we've pretty much touched on all we can for this week. So, how long we got in the school year? I know you got kids in school.
Well, the school seems to end right around the time of my youngest son Brandon's birthday, which is May the 22nd. So right around then. So we've got about a month here left with the spring sports and the school year all together. And then, of course, it'll be back to football.
Yeah.
All right, because summer practices will start hard and heavy.
Yeah, you're seeing the spring games and the college football already. So the football fever is going to start steadily picking up.
Some of the football players it's already starting to infect them. They're back in the weight room, and they're looking forward to the summer workouts, and they're ready to go. They're ready to strap those pads back on. So, and we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, always football season. Once you get to the end of the school year, that's the next thing to look forward to. So, got some time left here in the spring. About a month left here on the roundtable we'll have for the rest of the school year. And we'll be sure to keep you engaged in all the spring sports happenings going forward. And Travis, we appreciate you spending some time with us today and get us caught up on everything. And we'll look forward to having you back next week right here on the Roundtable. And until then, Tyler Wagner, Travis Gutermas, Caleb Johns in the control room bringing you the graphics. And we'll see you next week. Take care.